Hi guys, and welcome to The Truth About Saturated Fat. Now just before we get started, I'm going to ask everyone a really quick question. What if saturated fat was not bad for you? Let's just think about that one for a minute. Kind of an interesting question, isn't it? And I guess it's something that you might not have really considered before now. So where am I going with this? Okay guys, just before we go any further, I'm just going to throw something out there. What I'm going to show you, it's probably going to confuse a few people. And you know what? It might even upset and offend a few people as well, especially if you own a multi-billion-dollar health food company. Basically, this fat-burning food video is probably going to be labeled controversial. Now, it's not going to be called controversial because the science I'm going to show you is flawed, or because I'm presenting some miracle weight loss technique to you that's guaranteed to half your body fat percentage in 2 days. It's nothing like that. It's basically because the health food industry and the mass media has spent the last 60 years or so and literally hundreds of billions of dollars convincing us that saturated fat is bad for us. Let's face it, for most of us it's all we've ever known. I mean, since birth, we've been told saturated fats are the enemy. But here's the real truth. Saturated fat is not bad for our health. It does not increase the risk of heart disease. In fact, there is evidence to suggest that it might actually be beneficial to our health and help us lose weight and reduce our body fat percentage. Here's a really interesting quote that I found in Men's Health magazine recently. For decades, Americans have been told that saturated fat clogs arteries and causes heart disease. But there's just one problem. No one's ever proved it. So it kind of begs the question, doesn't it? Why do we all believe it to be true? Why do we believe saturated fats are bad for us and make us fat? Well, how did it all begin? Well, the misinformation actually started all the way back in the 1950s, would you believe? This gentleman on the right, Dr. Ansel Keys, he published a paper that claimed a remarkable relationship between fat intake and heart disease. Now, Ansel claimed that from the 6 countries he studied, now this is an important point, he only studied 6 countries and there was actually data available for more than 20. He found that those with the highest rates of heart disease also ate the most fat. Now this hypothesis became known as the diet heart hypothesis. Ansel's paper and Ansel's findings really did pick up a lot of momentum, but he did have his critics at the time the paper was published. Jacob Yerushalmi, and I really hope I haven't butchered his name there, actually showed that the relationship between fat intake and heart disease disappeared if the data from all available countries was studied. Bit of a major flaw there. But the mass media and even heavyweight supporters such as the AHA, the American Heart Association, supported Key's findings, and he really went from strength to strength. His findings grew momentum, and by the 1970s he'd evolved his work into a 7-country study. Now there Ansel is on the cover of Time magazine. He really did become quite the scientific celebrity. And in his latest 7-country study, he concluded that saturated fats from animal food were related to heart attacks. He also said that cholesterol caused heart disease, but his main conclusion was that saturated fats alone, not any other kind of fat at all, raised cholesterol and caused heart disease. And once again, there were problems with Key's findings. 3 of the 7 countries he studied, which is more than 40%, didn't even support his conclusion, and there was no mention of important factors such as stress, refined sugar consumption, smoking, or exercise levels. Now fast forward to the present day, and billion-dollar health companies, the mass media, food producers, they are still marketing their products based on these findings, but nobody has ever proven them to be true. Now you might be forgiven for thinking that there have been hundreds of studies over the years, but no, we're still going by ants or keys work. Now let's look at the other side of the coin just for a moment. Has anybody ever proven that saturated fat can be good for you? Well, I'm glad you asked, because yes, they have. Now there have been several studies conducted of the Maasai, which is a nomadic Kenyan tribe, and Pacific Islanders over the years. Both of those two societies are important because their diets consist of a very high percentage of saturated fat. In the Maasai case, over 60% of their diet was saturated fat. It's well above what you and I would ever eat. And quite remarkably, they were found to have low body fat percentage, low cholesterol, and were virtually heart disease free. So something's not really adding up here. And the Maasai actually survived on raw meat, raw milk, and drank quite a lot of blood as well. But I know what you're thinking. Pacific Islanders, the Maasai, what if they just had good genetics? Well, it's actually been studied. Scientists thought to themselves exactly the same thing. It must be a genetics thing. But separate studies looked at Maasai and Pacific Islanders that had left their native lands, left their tribes, and adopted a more westernized diet, eating more of the foods that we eat: refined carbohydrates, fast food, sugars, packaged food, convenience food. And guess what? Body fat percentage, cholesterol, and risk of heart disease all went through the roof. Now let's quickly look at the types of saturated fat and just get a little bit more of an insight into whether this stuff's really bad for us. And there are more than 12 kinds of saturated fat, but the most common three I've listed here for you. Stearic acid or stearic acid is actually broken down during digestion into something known as oleic acid. And this is actually a monounsaturated fat that's abundant in olive oil. And we all know, we're all told, olive oil is a heart-healthy food. Now, stearic acid is found in animal fats and cocoa. Next up is lauric acid. Did you know that lauric acid has actually been proven to significantly increase levels of the good HDL cholesterol? And it's also been shown to improve overall immune system. Now, until recently, I didn't know this. It's actually being studied for its ability to improve immune system functions in HIV and AIDS patients. Now, this can be found in high quantities in palm and coconut oil. Now, last up is palmitic acid. Now, while this has been shown to increase levels of the bad LDL cholesterol, it actually increases level of the good HDL cholesterol to the same extent, if not more, than the negative. So this stuff is actually improving your overall cholesterol ratio, or at least maintaining it, so it has no negative impact on health. So if saturated fat isn't the bad guy, what are the real causes of heart disease and weight gain? Well, all of these promote inflammation inside the body and have a negative impact on our health. Smoking's a big one, stress, a lack of exercise, refined sugar and high fructose corn syrups, and these are actually found in the low-fat health foods that the big corporations are telling us to eat in order to avoid saturated fat. Refined vegetable and cooking oils, refined white carbohydrates, white bread, white pasta, white rice, and here's the big one: trans fat, artificial hydrogenated oils. Now think fast food joints, burgers, fries, donuts, apple pies, cherry pies, you name it. All of these foods are cooked in, cooked with, or include trans fats, and these are really increasing your chances of having heart disease at some point in the future and causing you to gain weight. So what am I saying? Of course, I'm not suggesting that you should go to the same lengths as the Maasai, eating 60% saturated fat, but there is simply no reason why you can't enjoy some of the following as part of a healthy nutritional program that's going to improve your health and help you lose weight. The grass-fed raw dairy products such as butter, cheese and milk, great for you. Lean cuts of red meat, coconut oil, palm oil, avocado, all contain healthy saturated fats. If you really want to learn more about saturated fats, then I highly recommend you head over to Google and just type in a couple of queries. Search for saturated fat man's health. Great article online there. And also I recommend you Google The Truth About Saturated Fats by Mary Enig. And of course, click the link directly below this presentation for more information on saturated fat. Guys, that's it. I hope I've helped you look at saturated fat in a different light. Thank you very much for being here. I'll catch you next time.